Welcome to Life L'Chaim. On today's show, we'll discuss the debate about circumcision with Moyle Michael Andron. And first, we'll talk with Mr. Motivator, Jacques Wiesel, about his roots in the Holocaust and his desire to make the world a better place. Right after these messages.
Joining us in studio today, we're honored to have Jacques Wiesel. Mr. Wiesel, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
I know you are a motivational speaker, you're an author, and you've recently done finished your fourth book, which is autobiographical in nature, entitled Nine Knockdowns and 5 Miracles.
Correct.
Jacques, why at this point of your life have you decided to write your autobiography?
Well, about 7 years ago, I picked up that nasty little cancer bug, the prostate cancer. And I went through a little bit of hell with it, because I'm a fighter and I didn't give in to all of the normal stuff. I had healed myself of ulcers, a broken leg and all in the past. Anyway, it got me to thinking, and I said, there comes a time, people ask me all the time, how come you've never written about your experiences as a kid? I said, well, I have a mental lapse on that. I got a 3-year, corridor where I can't seem to crash through. So, well, it would be important for people to know that number one, that they were also refugees in North Africa, and that they were not treated very well either there. And number two, it's important to know where you're coming from to show how far you've come in life. That if I can do it, anyone can do it is my main thesis always. If Jacques can do it, you can do it out there. So no more excuses,
Right.
So I started to write September 1st, and it took me exactly 6 months, 60,000 words. Then the next 3 months I took cleaning it up, and then the rest of it is history with my publishers.
Right.
Wow, who all deal with me from Philippines, all of them.
Well, you've dedicated this book to your cousin, the famed Nazi hunter Ellis Wiesel.
Right.
And with that, you are a Holocaust survivor, and your story begins. You talked to when you were in those first 7 years as being born in Brussels, Belgium.
Right.
And so, talk to us about some of the challenges that you've overcome during that time.
Okay, well, since so many things happened to me, the 9 knockdowns, for example, between ages 7 and 10, I like to deal with children issues and how we're bringing them up today and all. So in the book, I wrote a little something about that I'd like to quote myself on, about children. Quote, "It only takes a careful look into the eyes of a newborn baby to read the following guidelines. Number 1, I am made in the image of God. Number 2, my main source of nourishment is love. Number 3, I have intuitive knowledge of the entire human race. Number 4, I have unlimited potential. Please do not fold, spindle, or mutilate me," which comes from the old IBM cards, "in any way physically, mentally, or spiritually. This is a user-friendly universe." And this is what I would like to pass on to people, that they remember, parents, grandparents, that they remember when dealing with the young minds that keep coming into the world all the time.
And your reference point to that is that so many people talk about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and that reference is for those who may come back from a military engagement.
Exactly.
And you refer to that many of us who have suffered trauma in our youth, and certainly your experiences from surviving the Holocaust fit into that. And talk to us a little bit more, about that and about surviving.
Okay,
that.
well, Sigmund Freud, the great psychologist, said that we begin life in a birth trauma, he calls it. So that's your first PTSD. You come out of a warm environment, loved and fed and everything, and all of a sudden lights, and then in the olden days, he used to turn you upside down and smack you. What a way to, and it would make people want to go back again.
Right.
So everything that happens, all the research I've been doing since then for the book, shows that number 7 seems to be the magic number, or the tragic number, I might say. Age 7, exactly. And I prove it with myself. At age 7, the bombs, May 10th, 1940, the bombs started to fall in Brussels. And we sat there. We didn't go to school anymore. We sat there for 4 days while my father got visas for us to leave the country, actually. Right. And May 14th, we ran to the North Station in Brussels, and there were thousands of Jews over there trying to get into the few trains that they had there. And the nuns at the time were very good to us, and they gave us food to take along on our trip. And so here I had the silverware in a little bag, and I had matzah in another bag, because Passover had just finished. So I called it a second diaspora, with the matzahs and all. So we escaped to France, and meanwhile we were waylaid in a side rail, whatever they call that, a siding, for 2 days at least, while the bombs kept falling from the Stukas, and the French troops, at the beginning at least, were trying to help by moving north, going into Belgium to try to stop the advance of the Germans. So then we went south again, and they didn't hit us. That's another miracle. That's why we're talking about that. Went south to a little city, a little town called Villariès. Stayed there a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks maybe, and then we found out the French are rounding up the Jews now. Yeah, for no good purpose, obviously.
The French are?
The French, which turned out to be real baddies out there, the Vichy government. It aided and abetted all the things that the Nazis were doing then. So we ran to a little city called Bayonne, not New Jersey, unfortunately, but Bayonne, France. And we stayed overnight in the railroad station. They stole my bag with all the silverware and the candlesticks that my mother cherished from her mother and all. And I was asleep at the time. And from there, we got on board a big ship with 1,600 passengers. And we were there waiting to take off, and all of a sudden the purser came over and told my father we had to get off the ship because we had no food. They don't have it on board ship for these refugees. So we had to go on board, we had to go into town. My brother and I stayed by the what do you call it, the quay in French, and they went into town. By the time they came back, the boat took off. So we waited a day, and we found a little coal barge, I think it was. It had tank turrets in it, I remember that vividly, to help the Free French. We got on that, proceeded south, because north they were sinking everything in the English Channel, the German U-boats. 2 days or 3 days out towards North Africa, we ran into the debris, the rest of the ship we were supposed to be on.
It had been blown up?
Exactly, it had been torpedoed, yeah. So that's another miracle, actually. We were supposed to be on board that. Then we end up in Casablanca. And in Casablanca, they put us first in not a detention camp, but it was a racetrack. And we slept with the horses for a while, for a few days, till they put us in Le Cercle Français, which was like a circus. And we each had a little room, 8 by 10, for a family of 4. And there wasn't much food. My father couldn't work. We didn't get the usual things like haircuts or anything. The next 2.5 years, we just sat waiting for the Americans to come or the Germans to come and take us away. Luckily, the Americans came. General Patton, in full glory. One of the other miracles that we survived, my brother and I at least, we were sitting at home over there looking out the window, and overhead, a shell from the USS Mississippi, because we were living 1 block away from an army camp. So they were trying to destroy the camp, I guess. This shell was 16 inches wide. I did my research. By yay tall, I'm talking about taller than I am.
Right.
2,700 pounds, which is more than my car weighs. And it skidded right in front of us, 20 yards or 30 yards, and then it came to a stop. Dud. If it wasn't a dud, we wouldn't be sitting here. You'd have another guest here today.
Right.
So the Americans invaded, and then the Nazis came, the French government rather came, and they bombed again New Year's Eve.
Well, we're going to take a break now.
Okay.
But when we come back, I want to talk about how you've taken these life experiences, these miracles that resulted from the knockdowns, and how you turned it to a life of motivation and positivity, and how you've chosen to help others along that path.
Okay.
Okay. We'll be right back after these messages. We're back with Jacques Wiesel. Mr. Wiesel, in our first segment, you were talking about the challenges that you had to overcome in your life and some of the experiences of surviving the Holocaust. And what you've been able to do is to turn that into a life of positivity. How did you come to the realization, in terms of your thought process, this is how you needed to move forward in your life?
Well, before I was born even, my parents had visas to come to the United States, but the quota in Belgium was very low. My mother's entire family was in the United States. My father's was in Czechoslovakia, and they all perished. So the American dream, that was in my head, always, come to America, come to America, come to America. And I guess that made me survive anything that was happening over there. Lack of food, there was also an incident there where a French bully sodomized me and then tried to drown me. That's another one of the miracles that I didn't think. It's a PTSD I still carry, by the way. 70 years later, you put me in shallow water, and as I swim and I can't touch the edge, I panic, absolutely panic. 70, I want people to understand, 70 years later, a traumatic thing can still bother you if you haven't worked it out.
Right.
My second PTSD that I still kept is just in case there isn't enough food again. It's amazing, isn't it? So I keep a little pot around over here just for a new reserve tank.
Right. Very good.
At least that's my excuse.
Right, exactly. You got to have one.
Yeah.
Right. But you've been able to take these traumas and self-recognize that you've suffered from these PTSDs. So you had to come to that realization, do your own research, and then decide that you weren't going to let them rule your life.
Okay.
So what was that experience?
Well, I first started selling encyclopedias because I was a believer in Encyclopedia Britannica. I had owned a little set. My mother had bought when we came here from one of those what do you call it, Publix.
Right.
At 19 cents, you got A volume. Next week, you got B volume for 19 cents. And I was hungry for knowledge because I hadn't had any for 3 years. My mind stultified. And when I came to the United States, I realized I had a lot of problems. With my first wife, I was really, and she also has self-esteem problems. We were battling each other instead of helping each other. So I went to see a shrink, whom I sold a set of Britannicas to, so I knew him before. And for 2 years, I spent my money every week with him. And what he did to me, I think, was not absolutely right. Instead of doing what they do now, they understand, like Dr. Wayne Dyer, that you discuss the problem once, and then the rest of the time, it's always solution, solution, solution. He strived to talk about the problems always. And I wrote them down because I wanted to get my money's worth. And each time I came to him for the session, first 5 minutes, I would read what I wrote. He said, yeah, you got that right. Now let's continue on again. And it was always the negative stuff. I tried hypnosis. I can't be hypnotized. I've spent all kinds of money. I can't be hypnotized. I refuse to give up my self-control.
Right.
Because I'm so afraid, I guess. And I went to group therapy. They kicked me out because they said, Mr. Wiesel, you're so busy working with all the others, their minds, you're not giving anything of yours, you're out. So I had to go on my own quest, and I started reading again. I read psychologists. I read some of the most wonderful people in the world. They've got the greatest ideas. Today they may seem antiquated to some people, but they're really not. We need to get back to fundamentalism, so to speak, and how to treat the human mind and the human body, because they are connected.
But in this book, as well as the previous ones that you've written, there's always a message of positivity, how to stay focused on the future, how to stay just positive in your daily thought process.
Right.
So you came to that point, and I mean you took those life experiences and translated them into, now I'm going to write about them and I'm going to speak about them.
Right.
And so where was that seminal moment where that occurred?
I have no idea.
What was your first speaking engagement?
My first speaking, that was for Encyclopedia Britannica. When I became #1 in the company. I became #1 in 4 international companies, by the way, in selling. That was the survivor instinct.
Right.
And I moved from a roach-infested apartment on East 91st Street in Manhattan to Central Park West, a brand new building with a Lincoln Continental, the American dream. But I lost my first wife that way because I was a work hound, 24/7.
So you got half of the American dream.
There you go. I had product belief, and I believe when I teach, I've done a lot of sales training. That's part of my resume. And I had product belief in it, so I only sold something I believed would benefit others. So it was Britannica first, then World Book Encyclopedia. Then I wanted to know more about motivation, so I bought a franchise with a company called Success Motivation Institute out of Waco, Texas. I learned about motivation, the training programs, And I started to sell that. And once again, I was always in the top 10 or number 1 selling it because I believed in it. Mm-hmm. The problem here was they don't work, those programs.
So when you speak to people today, and you've spoken for companies and you speak at aging homes, and I know you do a lot of active speaking. What is it that they're looking for from you, and what are you able to offer?
Hope. I'm saying that no matter what age, I just wrote I've been writing an article for 10 years now, a monthly article for the Happy Herald. Mm-hmm. And this one I just wrote last month is, I can see 80 from here, because I'm 79 years old. Right. And I use humor in it, and I talk about it's no big deal, it's a number. And if you don't like to tell it to people, keep it unlisted, like your phone number. And the thing is, I feel 45, 50. I don't look anywhere near my age. Nobody believes me, no wrinkles or anything. I work out, and I have a great attitude. Attitude is the number one thing. All research shows that when you deal with people, if you're going to succeed with them, attitude is 85%, and your aptitudinal skills 15%. Although you have to know them 100%, mm-hmm. but your skills. But they only account for 15% if you deal with people on a daily basis.
Do you have specific things that you do mentally on a daily basis to get you to that point?
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
No, when I wake up,
But you had to. At some point, you had to.
Of course, yeah.
What were some of those?
Well, I tried positive affirmations and all mm-hmm. for years, and I had the books, and I had the on the wall pieces that said leadership is so and so, and guess what? They don't work. And I've got the research to prove again they don't work, because nothing will change you unless your self-esteem is what I call a tabula rasa, a clean slate. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a clean slate about all the negativity that you've accumulated, you will never reach your goals, because the bottom line always is, am I worth it? And nobody seems to realize that. All the books on motivation, when I do a talk to a group, first thing I say, how many of you are Think and Grow Rich? The Power of Positive, all the hands go up. What are you doing here? They say, what are you doing here then? Why don't they work? And you read them years ago. That's when I begin to explain that if they don't do some inward work first, all the outside stuff that they stimuli won't do them any real good.
Right. Well, Jacques, it was a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you.
If our viewers want to read our books, they can go to Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com, or they can go to your website at JacquesWiesel.com. And I urge you to do so. There's some great information and some great forms of positivity. So, Jacques, it was a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you down the road.
Good. Love to.
And we'll be back right after these messages.